All right, welcome back. So in this video, we're gonna create some TV screen materials, right? So I'm using V-Ray 5, if anyone curious. Nothing special. I'm using quite default settings, brute force light cache, right? So let's create first two materials, which are gonna be TV off, right? So TV off glossy. Okay, and I'm gonna shift drag it, copy it, and I'm gonna put TV off matte, right? So the first one, glossy one, is gonna be color black at 1. Okay, I wouldn't recommend putting 0 or 255 in creating materials in general, because sometimes it can give you artifacts and you don't really want to create completely black colors or completely white colors, right? So I would recommend you to put, minimum to 1, right? So that's almost a blackish color. And for the reflection, I'm going to put 150, press OK. And for the glossiness, I'm going to leave 1, okay? So this is our TV glossy, and this is going to be our TV matte. So we're going to put 1 again. We're going to reflection is going to be 150 again. And for the glossiness, we can put 1.7 or so, or 1.75, right? So now we're going to apply this material onto our TV screen only. And we're going to try to render this in interactive mode. And as you can see, that's your TV off with the black glossy screen, right? And I'm going to apply a matte material, which is this one. And as you can see, it's completely matte. We can play around the reflection a bit, maybe put 180 and put from 7 to 85. And this is obviously getting closer and closer. I'm just going to crank this down a bit up, pull it in. There we go. So this is your matte looking TV, and obviously this is your glossy looking TV. I usually prefer glossy ones because it does look a bit more nicer and natural, because most of the TVs are quite glossy. Um, so this is TV off, glossy TV off matte. All right, so I'm gonna press pause for now, stop for now, and we're gonna create a lit material, right? So we're gonna, the first option is gonna be with V-Ray material, right? So with V-Ray material, also, we're gonna type this lit TV. Okay, so we're gonna grab a bitmap, whatever bitmap you can find at 1080p or 4K, doesn't matter, because usually these TV models are modeled according to correct aspect ratio, so it's not gonna be higher or wider. This is the aspect ratio. You can slap a full HD image or a 4K image as long as the proportions are correct, right? And you can always use a UV map on top of the plane just to correct the UVs, right? So what we're gonna do now here is use a bitmap, and I just took this bitmap from Google Images, and this is a scene from a Hobbit. As you can see, it's quite black and goldy, so I'm gonna double click that. And the next thing I usually do is apply color correction, because just in case I will want to correct some colors, I will be able to do that, right? So for example, shift some hues, right? And stuff like that, right? So I'm gonna put 0 for now. So I'm gonna leave this as 0 for now, right? So the next thing you wanna do is put this color, sorry, the reflection color to, let's just say 150, right? You can put this to 150. Okay, so that's gonna be your glossy surface material. And then what we want to do is actually chuck this into the self illumination, which is here, right? So we just chuck that map there. The third thing you want to do is obviously compensate camera exposure. That should be on, because I'm just gonna show you in real time. So I'm gonna apply this material there and press play. There we go. So I'm gonna obviously explain this a bit more so you would get a better understanding how it works. So for example, I'm just gonna increase this a bit. So for example, if I'm gonna unplug the diffuse map, and if this color is going to be light, it's going to give you this weird effect. Obviously you can use different hues if for whatever reason you want to do that, right? So make it darker, or you want to apply a bit of a hue, you can disable the diffuse map. But if you really want to use just this diffuse map, right, so without any blendings or whatever, you can just chuck this in there, or you can put this to almost completely black color, or you can try 0 as well, but it will not change anything in general. So if you put this to 1 or 0, basically it's going to give this result. So look what's going to have to how it's going to change if I'm going to plug this here. So as you can see, not a big change, right? It changes a bit into the highlights, but in general, we can even compensate this with the lightness. So which we can multiply this 1.4, and also we can always play with advanced. For example, we can increase the contrast to 0.95 and increase the lightness a bit to 130, even 150 or 200, as you can see here, right? So for example, I'm going to leave this for 100 and by default 1, right? Like I said, you can play with hues if you want to, but usually on the safe side, just plug this to diffuse and you're going to get basically your bitmap representation a bit more correctly. Because some people like to play with the diffuse hue. So for example, if they want to blend it a bit, sorry, you have to increase the lightness a bit, so a bit more reddish, something like that, or maybe a bit more violet, something like that, right? You can play around like that if you want to, but I usually on the safe side plug this here and you should be good to go, right? And then from then on, what you can do is basically play, always compensate camera exposure. That should be on, because if you're playing with different exposures, this will automatically correct the TV material exposure, right? So if you want for the TV to be more light, you can put this to 5 to, well, that's a bit overexposed. I wouldn't recommend for you guys to put this too high. You don't want to overexpose your materials, your TV, for this instance, because when you're going to be applying color corrections in After Effects or Photoshop or whatever post-production software, your highlights are going to be more exposed, and your blacks are going to be more underexposed. So you kind of want to keep this, quite neutral, right? So for example, 1.2, even 1 will work. All right. So another thing is, if you're going to increase this to 50, as you can see, this material is only gonna self-illuminate. It's not gonna cast any illumination onto your scene, as you can see here. This book is only taking the reflection from the TV because it's so bright. But if we're gonna click the GI, it's actually gonna act like a proper light, right? It's gonna basically um, it's gonna basically put light into your scene. It's gonna illuminate light, right? So GI on, and as you can see, it casts light onto your scene. Now, in general, I wouldn't recommend doing that. You can get different approaches. There are other approaches how to do that in a more simple way. But in general, I would not recommend using the GI. And even if you're using GI, right, you really have to crank this number up, because if you're going to use this at 1.3, which looks good now, but it's not casting any illumination, any light into your scene, right? It's only reflections are going to be taken. So I would just disable this, right? Unless for some reason you want to use, I don't know, a white material, for example, a white light like this, and you want to illuminate this like at 50 or 80. Sorry, not the multiplier, the color. So for example, at white. So yes, that will work, but at the same time, I'm not even getting for what you would be using this. I would just use a very plain light or whatever. So keep this as is, self-illumination 1.3, for example. Put this color. This color doesn't matter, right? If you're going to be controlling it, it will not matter because you're using a bitmap. And don't forget to use compensate camera exposure. So this is pretty much it for this material, okay? So this is quite simple, but at the same time, it can get a bit more complex if you play around with this more. This diffuse color will not do anything again because you are using the bitmap unless you're gonna start playing around with the diffuse value, which is, for example, if I'm gonna use 50, then my color is gonna start playing, right? So, but because I'm using 100% bitmap, that's how it's gonna work, right? So, okay, so this was quite simple. It's only illuminating itself, so it's not going to cast any light onto your scene. The next one is quite simple as well. I'm using this option quite often also. So you're going to use the light material. So you're going to plug this into light color, okay? So I'm going to apply on the TV. As you can see here, I applied on the TV, but we have to check compensate camera exposure, right? So we're compensating camera exposure. Again, if you want to preview this in the viewport, as you can see, we are seeing a white color. So if you want to preview this, so double click here, and you still don't see this in your viewport. So what you have to do is basically go to view light material and check this color to black, and you're gonna start seeing your previews. You can see here, bam, 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 bam. And now you can see your preview, right? So it has to be black. So there we go. So we can see our preview, our light material. We have compensate camera exposure on. Okay, so for example, if I'm gonna put this to 50, so this light material is acting like a light, but again, I would not recommend using a TV material like that because as you can see now, if you want to get some light, you have to, overexpose the TV by quite a bit, right? So we don't really want to do that. So we're going to keep this at 1 point, let's just say 4 for now, okay? But now you can see that we're missing something. We're missing reflections, right? So how can we introduce those? Well, that's a really easy approach. So you just use a very blend material, okay? So you check this very light material into the base. By the way, very light material, direct illumination on, don't really use that. There are other better approaches how to do that. Which is basically using a very light mesh or a very light plane or just a very proper very light because you have a lot more control there. These are really limited, okay? You cannot even exclude things from this one, okay? So keep that in mind. So I'm showing you a really simple setup, a really fast setup. You don't really need to tweak a lot of things here. So the next thing you want to do is create that reflective surface, right? So we're going to create a V-Ray material and we're going to chuck this as a color 1, reflection 150, and that should work quite well, right? So we're just going to plug this into coat 1. So now these two materials are going to blend with each other. So I'm going to apply, double click on this, and I will apply on my screen. And as you can see now, we are getting a reflection on. But also you can see that the TV became more dimmer, right? So don't worry about this material. What you need to do is basically start dominating the lightness, the illumination of the light material. So because these materials are now blending with each other, so it's kind of taking 50% of this and 50% of this because you're blending. So what you need to do is basically go to the light material and increase this to, for example, 2, right? And as you can see, the hell I'm talking about. And as you can see, this TV is gonna get brighter and brighter. But remember, don't try to, overexpose it, right? So in this case, I would leave it to somewhere at 3 or 2.6, right? With this particular image, by the way. So now you're getting, a glossy reflection and a light, a self-illuminated material, right? So even if this room is going to be dark, so for example, I'm going to select my user eye. Sorry, not that one, this one. And just disable the light. So as you can see, it does illuminate a bit of light, right, onto your scene. Okay. So, and even if you are going to, I'm just going to select my screen. Even if you're going to apply this old material, lit TV with the self-illumination. So as you can see, it does get all the, a little bit of that illumination from that material. So I'm going to apply this for now. Okay. So this is the second approach of how you can do that. And my third approach would be, obviously, if you don't want that this material would illuminate any light onto your scene, right? So what you need to do is basically, it's a bit more complex, but you need to do is basically, so right click on this object, V-Ray properties, and generate GI. You can just receive GI as well off. Receive GI. You can leave it on. So as you can see, it's not gonna generate any GI, which is basically all the light samples from the TV geometry itself. It's gonna be ignored. So, and in general, that's what you want to do in most cases, because if the scene is going to be lit, you're not going to see anything, right? So even if I'm going to apply this material now, as you can see, the books and the panels, well, you cannot see the panels that well, but the books are a bit more reflective. You are going to see a bit of the reflection from the TV, okay? So, but if for some reason you want to, make, revert this back, so generate GI, so apply that. So as you can see, it will apply a bit more light onto your scene if for whatever reason you want to do that, right? So, but usually I do uncheck this off because you're basically taking you're giving less work for V-Ray to calculate, right? It's going to calculate faster and more cleaner, this area in particular, right? So the next thing that you can do if you want to illuminate a bit more light from the TV for whatever reason, for example, you're in a really dark area like home cinema or whatever, what you can do is you can create a V-Ray light plane, alongside this plane. Okay. So, and just offset it. So I'm going to go to top projection and just offset something like that, right? There we go. So now, as you can see, this light material is off, right? But if I'm going to click this at 1, for example, and if I'm going to click this on, as you can see, it will, give you a lot of options how to, manipulate this. So for example, I want that goldy color. So what I can do is choose this and choose a picker. And for example, choose a slightly golden color and make it maybe lighter and desaturate it. Something like that. You can really play around. You have the full control, right? And obviously you have to do is what you have to do is put invisible and cast shadows. You can't cast shadows because, you know, we are thinking that this is a light source, right? So you can leave cast shadows. You have to put invisible because you don't want to see the plane, right? You don't want to see this. And you want to uncheck affect speculars, affect reflections. You want to check that because your reflections are going to be taken from that one, right? And leave the effect diffuse on. Okay, so this is what we're getting now. So for example, even if we're gonna be putting the the user eye on, so I have more control now, you know, without overexposing my screen material. So if I'm gonna select this light, so I'm gonna click F3, select this light, and I'm gonna put this to, for example, 5. For whatever reason you want to really blow this out, right? Let me put this to a lighter color. And as you can see, we are starting to get some illumination, right? If I put this to 50, you know, it's a bit overkill. Obviously you wouldn't get that in the daytime. 20, 10. So as you can see, we do get more light from the TV. If you want to do that, and I would always recommend doing in this way because you have so much control. You can exclude objects, include objects. So for example, if I would want to include, you know, if I don't want to illuminate that light only, you know, to my whole scene, I can only, you know, select that light. And for example, you know, I want that light would illuminate only that part, and maybe that and those books. That's it, right? So I would create a selection set, you know, TV include, right? Press enter. And I would select my light and go to exclude, and I would put include and select my TV include, press that button and press OK. Okay. So this light now will only include those objects, all right? It will not give any illumination on any surface rather than just this, you know, white panel, those books, and that white panel, right? So this is just a pointer of how you can manipulate this, right? Another thing you can do is, I'm just gonna select shift, put that back, exclude, okay? Another thing you can do if you want the same colors, okay, is basically really easy. Just take this color and drag into the texture. That's it. So basically what's gonna happen now, it's gonna ignore this color and it's gonna sample all the colors from the TV, right? If you want to do that, right? Because for V-Ray is a lot easier to calculate only one solid color than all of these, you know, because this V-Ray light now is sampling all of these different colors, you know, blues, gold, and all of these basically pixels. Okay, so it's gonna be a bit harder for V-Ray to calculate it, but obviously it shouldn't take too long. But in general, if you're okay with just using a color, you know, you're gonna be perfectly fine. If you want that the same effect, you can use a texture inside of the texture tab here, right? Into the texture slot. And I think that is about it for the still approach, right? So this is a still image. This is only for the still. You know, nothing is changing. I'm gonna show you now another approach, how to use this kind of a thing for animation, right? So for example, you're rendering animations. So it's so it's really easy actually. If you go to, for example, you know, YouTube or something like that, you just copy a link. It doesn't matter what you know, footage you have, but I'm just gonna show you how to you can extract some images from some videos from for example, YouTube. So for example, if you know, type whatever, I type Hobbit 1080p, right? So it gave me this video. I chose this video, for example, and you copy this, and I went to Google and you type YouTube video converter, right? So you use YouTube video converter, for example, this one, and you click a link, paste, convert, MP4, that's fine. Get a link and you can download it, right? So I'm downloading The Hobbit, right? So if I'm gonna go to my, downloads. So as you can see, I can watch that video here. Okay. So the next thing you have to do, you will not be able to import this into Max. You need to export it, right? So what you have to do is, for example, open After Effects. Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna open After Effects really fast, and I'm gonna create a folder. So I'm gonna load After Effects right now. Okay, there we go. So it's a new project, doesn't matter. I'm just gonna minimize this, and I'm gonna, for example, create a folder called, Hobbit video footage, right? And I'm gonna copy this link, okay? And I'm gonna go to my After Effects. There we go. And I will drag and drop this video, which is on downloads. Okay, there we go. And I'm just gonna drag this into a new composition, right? So this is my play blast. And as I can see, I think this animation is at details 30 frames per second, right? So 30 frames per second. It doesn't really matter at what frame it is. We can export it at a lower frame rate. So for example, if I'm gonna go to my After Effects and let's check the settings here, project settings, sorry, not project settings, edit, preference, where is it? Preferences, import. So import is set at 25 frames per second, right? So we can put this to 24, 25. It doesn't really matter. We're going to be exporting images, okay? We're going to be exporting images. So whatever frame rate we're going to be rendering in 3ds Max, for example, 24, 25, or 30, that's how many images it's going to take. So let's just say 25. So 50 images, it's going to be 2 seconds, right? So 25 is 1 second, another 25 is second, and so on and so on. Same with 30, same with 24, right? So for example, I'm going to leave this at 25 frames per second. It doesn't really matter, right? So so what I'm going to do now is basically press composition, export media encoder. All right. And we're gonna wait a bit. It's gonna load, and we're gonna choose the format, which is gonna be not H.2.4 or QuickTime. It's gonna be basically JPEG. There we go. So we're gonna choose that destination, which is on my desktop. There we go. And we're gonna choose, let's just say Hobbit underscore, right? And we're gonna save. And the resolution, I assume the resolution is match source. That's definitely not my resolution. Let me check. Sorry, let me check this really quickly. So this is composition settings. This should be, did it, okay, I think it exported at 720. I think it exported at 720p. So if I'm gonna copy this really fast, copy, convert, MP4. Yes, we had to choose full HD. Okay, that doesn't matter. We can quickly download it. So downloads. We can delete that for now. It's really weird because I thought it's gonna be Okay, try again. Doesn't matter because I'm using it in the project. So let me just delete that. Go to here and delete that and that. All right, and now we should be able, we cannot delete it either way. All right, doesn't matter. So 1080p. Let's try to convert this and download. There we go. So this is the video. I'm just gonna cut it, put it on my desktop. All right, rename it as HB, whatever. And let's just double check if it's full HD. Yes, it is. Okay. So we're gonna open our After Effects and we're gonna drag and drop here. Bam, there we go. We're gonna drag and drop on the composition, and we're gonna basically what we're gonna do is, so for example, we can see here 250 frames, blah blah blah. We can choose that later, but obviously we can specify that here. So if I'm gonna drag this to, let's just say 250, right? So I'm just gonna click there and type 250, right? And press enter and drag that, hold shift, bam, right click on that timeline, trim to comp work area. There you go. Okay, so we're gonna export 250 frames. Okay, we're gonna export 250 frames. Okay, so we're gonna now put add to Adobe encoder. Okay, choose that, and we're gonna put this to JPEG. Okay, so the resolution is fine, everything looks fine. Now we're gonna choose, it doesn't really matter about the quality, Hobbit, and we're gonna put this HB underscore and press save, and we can export this out. It should be quite fast. There we go. So I'm gonna be showing you how you can use this on your animations as well. There we go. We exported that. So I'm just gonna close this After Effects file because I don't really need it. So I can delete that as well. And I think that is it. That's our frames, right? So this is our frames. As you can see here, I'm moving right. So what we need to do next is basically go back to our Max file, and what you need to change here is basically really easy, right? So we have our TV materials, which are both of these, right? What we can do is basically replace this material, right? So for example, so let's just say I want to render this animation at 25 frames per second, right? So I'm going to go to my settings, and I'm going to choose PAL. Or you can choose custom and type 25 and press enter, or choose also choose 250. Okay, and that's it. You have 250 frames and you're running this at PAL, which is 25 frames per second, right? So you press OK, you choose 250, right? And then what you do is basically change this material. Go to your desktop, for example, Hobbit, where the frames are located. You click one image, and you don't choose open. Okay, you need to choose sequence. Okay, so it's gonna run this into the sequence. So press open then, and it's gonna prompt you with the image file list control, right? So you can specify the frames, but obviously I usually put the maximum that I exported, which is 250 frames, and I will put OK. All right, so this is going to change, and I can do the same thing here. Bam, bam. Sorry, sequence. Yes, there we go. Or you can just copy paste there. You can actually do this. It doesn't matter because you are controlling. Controlling. If you want to apply that, but you are using one main node, which is the Hobbit. Hobbit 250 frames, right? There we go. So you can use that, it doesn't matter. But in general, what you want to do now is basically play it, right? So let's just say I want to use this material on my TV screen. There we go. And I want to show this in the blend material, right? There we go. All right. So if I'm going to press play, this TV is gonna play. Now, another pointer for you guys, if you're using this replay on a massive animation, for example, a whole apartment animation, a lot, from 10 to 20 million polygons and blah, 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 and your camera is moving in your apartment or whatever, try to not show this in the viewport because it can get laggy, okay? So what I usually do is basically unplug, unplug, unplug again, or you just basically don't show, right? So for example, I unplug this, plug it there. So you will not see it in the viewport. It will be working, right? It will be working. You can even see this in you can even see this in the in the material previews. You can see here, right? Also, if it's getting laggy, you're seeing if it's getting your scene laggy, you can just unplug it for that time being, right? Just unplug it from your material, so it's not gonna be basically translating into these materials, right? So, but in general, if you unplug this and it's gonna be completely black, your viewport should work a lot faster if your camera is animating, blah, 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 etc. But for this, obviously, tutorial, I'm going to show this as shown. Okay. And basically, when you're rendering your animation, this is what you're going to see. And obviously, the TV is going to be lit. So I'm going to press play. There you go. So if I'm going to change, frame there, it's going to update. It's going to change there. It's going to update, as you can see. Update, blah, blah, blah. So when you render animation, basically you're going to get your animated TV, right? So just to summarize this, what we did is basically created two off materials, so which is the glossy one and the matte one. And then we translated this to, by the way, if you want to use matte, just decrease this value here. And the two second materials we created was using just a V-Ray self-illuminated tab material. And we created a blend material, which is using V-Ray light material, right? So these two approaches works completely fine. In my 13 years of experience, I never had issues rendering these ones. From time to time, I use this one. From time to time, I use this approach. It really depends if how much control do you want, right? So, and also, if you don't want to cast, if you don't want for this plane to cast any light into the scene, just right click, V-Ray properties, and generate GI off. So only the reflections are going to be taken, from your other, basically your other objects are going to be taking the reflection and the glossy reflections from your TV, right? But there's not going to be any light illumination from that geometry piece. So don't forget V-Ray properties, generate GI off, right? So you don't really want to generate GI from this plane, right, onto your scene. So in that sense, you create a V-Ray light plane if you really want to manipulate that light, right? So if it's a still, you can't get away with just a color, right? If you want to chuck your image in, you can. That's fine. You're gonna get the real representation of it, but obviously for V-Ray is gonna be a tiny bit more complicated to calculate it. But if you're using just a solid color, it's going to be a lot easier to calculate it and more straightforward. And for the animations, is the same thing. you can use a still color, right? Not animated color. You can animate the color, by the way, if you want to. But in general, you can leave it as a solid color, just like a fake effect. But if you want to, manipulate your screen as well, what you need to do is basically just plug this material to the texture material, right? So basically, this texture material is gonna start translating your texture as a light. So in this case, basically, you have the full control, right? You can, increase the lightness of the material itself, and you can increase the light separately, right? Or completely turn it off, for example, right? So, if I'm going to put this to 50, you can see that it's, beautifully illuminating that bluish color in the middle, right? Which is here. So if I'm going to put that there, you can see that the colors are changing a bit. I don't have that goldy color, but as you can see, this became darker and this became darker as well. If I'm going to put frame 0, it's going to be the same. So I'm pretty sure you're getting what I'm saying here, but obviously you wouldn't put this to, a really big intensity, you know? So maybe 5 is too low, but I think 10, or even 6 or 5 for this kind of image would be completely fine, right? So I think that is about it. And guys, listen, if you have any questions, after you watch a video, please, drop a comment. I will try to answer as soon as possible. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like or a dislike, and thank you very much, guys, and see you in my next video.